As the intro said, this is not for you. And hopefully, as I always say, this is not for the person it's made for. Hi, I'm Mr. Drakmore, and this is Drakmore Digital. And these words I say are to my son. Hello, Xander. I hope, beyond hope, that I will be there, and I will be with you to tell you all these stories. But as I continue to record this is just in case. With everything going on right now. With the world in upheaval, global pandemics, political crisis, and it feels like everything is going to explode the next second. I want to make sure this story is told, so you are able to know me if I'm not able to tell you. These are things that I may not have even told your mom, not by any reason, but just little things that really made me the person I am today. So, as of last time, I finished elementary school. I left Hatfield and moved out with my mother to Hadley. Hadley isn't very far. It's just across the river. But there's a stigma to that on either side. And it's interesting. It's an old rivalry or a weirdly instilled hate between the two towns. I know that when going back to Hatfield to visit my friends, or we used to have a dare center where every Friday night kids could come and hang out, play games, have snacks, do something that wasn't doing drugs in the general dare thought process. But I know that I got a lot of crap from a lot of people for being over in Hadley. It was weird. It was the first time I really felt that. Felt an outcast for people I knew. It felt odd and off, but it was a learning experience. And it's one of those moments of becoming thicker skinned, which isn't always a good thing. I say that not as though that you should grow a thicker skin or everyone should, no. But I did, and it's helped me in times of crisis as best it could. Now, we moved to the middle of nowhere in Hadley. Hadley has a ton of farmland, kind of like Hatfield does. But we decided to move out onto, basically, it was a driveway that was attached to a farm. It had two houses on it. I'm guessing at one point, maybe our house was owned by the same person, and maybe that's where all the workers lived, or that kind of stuff, all the farm hands and things. But as the farm became smaller, it was rented out or bought by someone else, and my mother and I rented it. We also had a few other roommates. This is the first time I've ever had roommates, but with a single mom, trying to make ends meet and, give a kid the best life he could. You find roommates. It was a very large house, and it had a huge attic. It felt very old, and that was kind of cool. But it also put us in the dead center of nowhere. Not knowing anyone in town, I had nowhere to go. I had no one to talk to, no one to interact with. The most I had was across the road was another kid about my age. So I hung out a few times. We didn't hit it off super well. He was no best friend material. But he sufficed for the time being, and we hung out and we had some fun during the summer times. Most of the time I probably stayed inside and played my games. I did that a lot, but that's single child of a divorced family situation. You kind of do that. I was too far out to go into town, and I was too far out to go to my friends when I wasn't going with my mom, or my friends didn't make their way all the way out to see me. So yeah, it became a little lonely, especially going into a new situation, a new town, a new school. I go to my first day at school. I went to Hopkins Academy. Let me tell you that as a person who went to public school all of his life, adding the term academy onto a public school is terrifying. It wasn't then, but it is now. It brings a thought, a very specific vision to your mind. It just does. And by God, do I look at it now and go, maybe that's why it sucked so much. And it did. It was the worst. This whole thing, like I said, may have been the worst time in my life. At least mentally wise. Yes, right now is terrible. We've been stuck inside for almost 9 months, if not more. Especially depending, when you watch this, who knows how long it was. We're under such political strife that there's talk of a civil war breaking out in November. Everything is so crazy right now. But mentally speaking, I know who I am. I know what I'm doing. And I try my darndest to wake up every day and remember that. To be strong for you and your mom and my friends. And hope beyond hope that we'll make it through this better. And we'll grow out of this and become better people and have a better world. Back then, I didn't know anything about myself. I didn't know who I was. I was still trying to figure that all out, and it took me a really long time to get so centrally focused on who I truly am, and it was not now. As I still am, I was overweight. My hair was bad. My look was bad. I was awkward. And so I was a very easy target for bullies. Heck, I was also the new kid, on top of everything. And that's all that mattered, because as soon as I got to school, bullying started in the first day, in the first few moments, as soon as I got to homeroom. These 3 individuals, obviously, you have your basic, your face and your muscle. If you get in a situation with bullies, 2 guys who are led around by a much smaller and much more intelligent, I guess you could say, but at least just much more manipulative person. While the other 2 were not super smart, but hey, he didn't bully them if they followed through with what he asked, or if they joined in. And you'll find a lot of that happening. You'll also learn, I hope you learn, that bullying stems a lot from a person feeling inadequate or being bullied themselves, and it's something to feel bad for the person for. Granted, not in the moment. The moment the person's an asshole. And I bet if you were to come at them apologetically, it probably wouldn't end well, though I'd be very proud of you if you did. So they jumped on me. I was new. I was overweight. I was awkward. I was easy. And that was fun. That continued throughout the entire year. Some things like that. But also, within the first day, I met who became my best friend during that year. My saving grace. I met a few guys that were part of the friends group, and I think there was a woman or 2, probably, or a girl or 2, probably. I don't remember. Possibly not. We were those like super nerds who were just like collectively hanging out with each other because no one else really wanted to hang out with us. I mean, it's just true. It's almost just a bad cliche, but it's true. Especially Andre. Andre was my best friend. He was weird. He was tall, he was scrawny. He was awkward. And he really, really liked the army, the Navy, military, guns, things like that. And it was very evident in a lot of his actions, including the video games we played, the books we read, the movies we watched, and the fact that we learned how to make a flamethrower out of a can of hairspray, a lighter, to melt matchbox cars to the ground. Don't do that. It's very dangerous. If you're going to want to make a flamethrower, I probably can show you a better way of doing it that won't explode in your hands. Let's talk. At least before you start making flamethrowers in the backyard. But yeah, Andre was there for me from pretty much the get. He was a very interesting character, very nice to have around, because he too got it from those bullies. So we could bounce off each other and basically laugh about, well, what did they do to us today? And in turn, through Andre, I found a group. We were losers, nerds, the nobodies. But we had each other, and it was a good time when it happened. I still, to this day, have a Mew that I accidentally stole from one of them because the vice principal didn't like us playing games in the cafeteria. That's kicking around as long as the battery still lasts in my Pokemon Blue. So, that's fun. That's one of those things that I keep with me still, or kept with me still. I would say one thing that occurred, because as a person who gets bullied, you like to keep your head down. You like to stay as unnoticeable as possible. I excelled at that school. I did. I paid attention. I listened. I think I also still may have been taking my ADD meds at that point. I might have given them up when I moved to my dad's house. We'll get to that. But if I was, then yeah, I excelled. I did all my homework. I was always on time. I got great grades. My art classes, I had gone through the project so fast because I stayed after school because I didn't want to deal with my bullies. And I believe I was waiting for my mom to pick me up. I would stay after school and work on the next portion of the project. So much so that I was able to do a special art project for myself and kind of make my own criteria for it. So much so that in our computer science class, which is basically learn how to type or use a computer, I finished all of the projects so quickly I played the game Commando for the last month and a half of that class. It was great. But yeah, I will say that is the one thing that came out of it. I got great grades because I didn't want to do anything other than keep my head down and be quiet. Because I also learned through this that bullying was not exclusively students. I have always been into fantasy and magic and the supernatural and things like that. The word pyrokinesis had come up a few times in either horror movies or shows about the paranormal or things like that, or even comic books. So I knew that word. I had used it in something, and I forget exactly what we were talking about, but I remember bringing up the word pyrokinesis in reference to telekinesis, which is moving things with your mind or controlling things with your mind. And I brought up the word telekinesis, and I forget exactly why, but it was in science class, and my science teacher, who definitely did not like me. She was an older woman who just seemed that she needed to find someone to break down, and I was that person. And so in the middle of class, I brought that up, and she said that word doesn't exist. And I said, no, it does, and cite my sources as best I could. She's like, well, you go over there to the giant dictionary and find it. And I look, and it's not there. Of course it's not. The Webster Dictionary from probably like the 1980s. Who the fuck would put pyrokinesis in that? I don't even know if it's there now, but it's a word. It is the controlling of fire with your mind. That's the definition, or somewhat some summation of it. But in the middle of class, she stopped the whole thing to have me walk up, walk over, look, not find it, and then proceeded to laugh with the class at my lack of being able to find it. So learning that I really had no safe haven away from actions like that, all I did was work. All I did was work and then hang out with one small set of people. Never did anything in the realm of sports. And I had, in previous years, never did anything in the realm of things like chorus or theater, which I also had. I just kept my head down and let this boil and roil inside of me. So much so that over the course of many months. I believe I tried to run away twice. Now, these are very, very limited attempts. These attempts consisted of throwing a bunch of toys in a bag with a couple pieces of clothing and thinking about walking down to my grandmother's house in the next town over. Nothing really would have come of it other than a call from my mother and a concerned look, and possibly a bring back to therapy, which I really haven't talked about, but the fact that I've gone to it a few times. And really, if you think about it, especially at that time in my life, I was just confused, and life was going by so fast, and I didn't have as much support as I could because single parents. But yeah, so there were many times I went to therapy because of that, because I was acting out or I wasn't doing well, or I tried to run away. And my mom didn't understand why. And of course, as a teenager, or very early teen, preteen possibly, you're not going to tell her, you're not going to explain yourself, you're going to say everything you need to say to get out of the therapy because you don't want to be there. And I did. I learned how to do that. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but by all means, I didn't feel like I needed to be there because I knew why I was having problems, even if I wasn't willing to tell her. So, I will also bring up, and this is a trigger warning right now, please skip ahead 30 seconds. In lieu of also wanting to run away, thoughts of other things like suicide came into mind. I never acted upon it. I never did anything like that. But it's the only time in my life that I've wanted to, because I felt like there was no other way out. I'm saying this right now, right here. For you or anyone else watching, there's always a way out. There's always someone willing to listen or talk or do something to help. That is not an easy answer. It may sound easy. It may feel easy at the time, but there is so much weight behind that thought process. Thankfully, I never acted upon those thoughts. Now, at the very tail end of the year, I had finally been fed up. I couldn't stand it anymore. I couldn't take it. The teacher bullying me, my 3 goons bullying me. And finally, that final art project that I got to do. I was so proud. I drew the Mona Lisa on a stool and signed my name on it. But I knew the upperclassmen got to make these designed like stools, paint them and do what they want. And so I asked the teacher, I was like, hey, I got all my work done. Can I do this? And she said, yeah, sure. So I painted the Mona Lisa. I didn't do it well. Granted, I did a rough shot job at best, I would say. My painting skills have yet to improve entirely, but I was very proud of it. I loved it. I love that I got to do it. I love that I had succeeded so much that I could. And I finished it probably about 2 or 3 days later. I signed my name. And the weekend rolls around, and I come back the next week. And I go into the art class because art's about to start. And my bullies are using it to grab something off the top shelf. And they had made sure to erase my name off of it. I guess I had signed it in, or possibly had painted it in watercolor. I don't even remember now. But I remember they had made sure to wipe it away. And made this whole deal of, your name's not on it. What are you talking about? Blah, blah, blah. And I think that's one of those moments when I snapped. It just broke down. I left. And I went to my next class, and I just remember not being able to deal with it anymore. And so happy that the end of the year was coming. And yeah. The year was over. I was finally free for the whole summer. I could not tell you how excited I was that I didn't have to go back for 3 months at least and see those people. And summer break rolled around, and unlike my normal times with summer break, I was told that I had to get a job. I wanted money to spend, and there was none outside of what we needed to survive, and that was, we were barely scraping by to begin with. So my mother got me my first job, which at a very young age, I think I must have been like 12 or 13, maybe 14. This is why this gets a little convoluted, because age about this time frame, I'm very confused. But I digress. I got my first job on the cucumber farm that was next door. I believe they grew other things, but that was the main thing that was exported from that farm. And yeah, my mom got me a job being a cucumber picker out in the fields. It was comparatively pretty posh for a farmhand job. We all just put on gloves, lay it on a mat on this moving platform, reach down, grab a cucumber, throw it on the conveyor belt. If it's rotten, you chuck it. If it's not, you put it on the conveyor belt. Super simple. It was hot, but we were in shade the whole time. It was a very nice setup. It was my very first job. And probably about 3 weeks in, maybe 3 weeks in, I stopped showing up for work. And I only did it once, and it only took once, because again, these are my neighbors. So they had a pretty good idea where I was or wasn't. And we started pretty damn early in the morning. So either I overslept or I just wasn't going. One day I decided not to go. And they sent over the guy who was like my quote-unquote manager at the time, knocked at my door, checked around, looked in the windows, which again, for a small farm town, for neighbors, isn't super weird. My mom was gone. I had free reign of the house. So I basically hid up in my room until they stopped knocking and calling. And what I didn't know is at that point, my mother was already having a very, very hard time with her going back to school and her taking on multiple jobs. It was a lot. And I was fired. And I think we all kind of took this the wrong way, because I was a 12-year-old kid and it was my first job. And yeah, so I fucked off and I didn't go to work. But it was the final straw for her, as the whole art situation was the final straw for me. And after that happened, we had a long talk about it and all that. And about a week later, she sat me down and said, "Chris, you're going to go move in with your dad." There's other words had. I probably cried, screamed. We probably cried together. I don't actually remember how. I don't remember if it went well or bad. I feel like it probably went bad. I didn't know how nice it would be. And for me, my mom was like everything. Yeah, my dad was awesome. I loved him very much. But my mom was the parent I had been living with for years and years. And to hear that she needed me to move out, basically, at like 12 years old. It's a lot. It's a lot. I might have been 13 by that point. I think I was 13 by that point. If I started school at 12, 7th grade, I think that sounds about right. I was probably 13 when we had this conversation. And a 13-year-old hearing their mother wants them to move out because she can't take it anymore. And not, there's so many saying that is so dangerous, because that's not exactly how I meant it, but I feel like I remember that's what she said, and I don't think she even meant it the way that sounds. But it was just so much pressure on her that she needed me to not be there. And in turn, I packed my bags. My dad came pick me up, and we moved out to Great Barrington, or at least I did. He was already living there for a couple of years now. And I left Hadley behind as a pure year of hell from start to finish. And no matter how much I grow and better myself, that will forever be this breaking point, this shatter point in my mind, where everything was so wrong that my mind and my psyche had to make it right. And it's weird to say, because of that, I am who I am today. But fuck if it wasn't the hardest thing to deal with at the time. And fuck if it doesn't stick with me now. Now, as we are over the worst year of my life, I will say that the next year may be truly one of the best school years I ever experienced. But we'll talk about that in the next video. I love you, bud. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.